I think I would receive close to 200 phone calls in a month. He posted on social media that I'm going to be his Laurie Strode tonight, and he's going to drag me to the grocery store next to my house, and that he couldn't wait to kill me.
I'm Jamie Beebe.
And I'm Jake Deptula. On today's episode of Strictly Stalking, we're chatting with Anne and her daughter, Lauren.
Lauren was stalked by an ex-boyfriend who tried to hack her social media accounts and email, vandalized her car, hid in the bushes outside of her residence, threatened her with physical violence, and harassed her mother.
Even after Lauren and Anne had him served with a temporary restraining order, his stalking continued, forcing Lauren to reach out to private investigator Eric Peterson, who joins us today as well. He runs Peterson Investigations, a full-service licensed private investigations agency.
Working together, they had Lauren's stalker arrested and got him to admit to all the crimes he committed and are currently awaiting his sentencing. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Lauren, why don't you tell us what life was like right before you met your stalker?
Life honestly was really good. I was, in the middle of college. I had just gotten accepted to my dream university, and I had just gotten a manager position at my restaurant. So for a, 21-year-old, I was really enjoying my life and looking forward to, the next steps of it.
Lauren, so how did you meet your ex-boyfriend?
He became an employee at the restaurant I worked at, and I met him that way. He didn't know a lot of people just moving from Wisconsin, and I, being a very social and friendly person, reached out to him immediately and became friends with him to, give him some comfort in a new state. When we were dating at the beginning, it was really, really awesome. He was super caring and conscious of my needs and my wants. And I told him, right off the bat that I was in the middle of school, and I was actually also looking for a job within the psychology field as well. So I was going to be pretty busy. Um, and he was totally accepting of that and supporting of that, um, until the last 2 or 3 months of our relationship. He would get upset when I would have to cancel just simple plans to go to his house and watch movies, to do homework, or he would get upset if I wanted to do a school event that was on the weekend instead of, again, go watch movies. A lot of the plans that we had together were not, we have tickets to something. They were just little hangouts. And when he started to get upset at those little things and not understanding that they were because of school, um, I started to feel trapped and suffocated. And I actually, once I got back into school after the summer, I went to a therapist to talk to her and ask her, how to how to break up with him respectfully and still keep his thoughts and his feelings in mind, but not waver my decision and not back down from doing it. She told me basically that in dating, you are allowed to be picky. You are allowed to find what you want and leave what you don't. And so she told me that if this is something that I am not happy with, is not making me happy, then I, under no obligation, need to be with him. And I agreed. I always knew that, but after talking with her, I felt better about doing it. She told me that as far as keeping his feelings and emotions in mind, to, let him talk, listen to what he has to say. But ultimately, because I knew that it was the right decision, to not change that position. And I ended up breaking up with him later that night.
How did he take it after you broke up with him?
He didn't take it well, but he didn't take it in a way that I would have felt my life was in danger, and I let him talk and explain. He felt that he did everything that he needed to do. He even started blaming me. I was listening. I would support and acknowledge what he said, but once he realized that I wasn't going to stagger from my decision, he started to insult me, say things about things we did in the relationships, personality traits of mine, physical features. And at that point, I just said that, obviously there was no more depth to this conversation, no more reason for this conversation to happen. And the day after we broke up, because the day after we broke up, I got a call from my work telling me that somebody had called them and basically slandered my name, said really horrible things. And at this point, I wasn't working at the restaurant anymore. I was working with autistic children. So the things that he said were just not appropriate at all for the type of environment I worked in. And I had to be investigated at my work. And then later on that day, um, my car breaks down, my engine stops, and I take it into the mechanic and I find out that someone had poured soda into my gas tank that same day that someone had called my work and slandered my name. And this was the day after we broke up. So immediately I knew that he was back at my house, with revenge, with angry intent. And that was the first time, too, that I had ever realized that maybe I didn't truly know who this person was, and maybe I didn't know what he was capable of, because prior to this, I thought that he was emotionally immature but not capable of hurting somebody. He started spamming my phone, just phone calls after phone calls. I don't know if he put out my number and I had a bunch of random people texting me, or if they were all him on different text apps. Some of them were, all of the nasty, threatening ones were, but at times, I would get texts from people saying they met me on a chat room. I would get texts from people saying that I'm selling stuff on Craigslist. And then he started to text my friends, and the friends that obviously knew him and had been around him for him to contact them. And he started, threatening them. He threatened that he was waiting at my house. And since, he had been at my house to vandalize my car, I took those seriously. Whether or not I saw him, if I saw him texting me, posting on social media to me that he was waiting at my house, he was going to let my animals out, he was going to drag me to the grocery store, just really awful things like that. And that had continued for almost 6 months of those text messages. I would get things like post-it notes to like on my door, on my carport. I'd get flowers on my porch. I would get flowers in my driveway where my carport is. Um, it was every single day there was something. I eventually had to change my phone number and I had to delete all my social media accounts because he would just consistently either try and hack into them. I would get emails that, there was attempts to log in, or he would make accounts or make numbers to get a hold of me, and I could not get away from him.
When did he start harassing your mom?
He started harassing my mother after I had actually deleted my social medias and changed my phone number, because at that point, he didn't have a way to get in direct contact with me. My social medias were gone, so he couldn't see what I was up to. My phone number was, invalid, so every time he called, there was nobody there. So he started harassing my mom.
How did it make you feel that he was harassing your mom?
The biggest emotion I had was embarrassment. I just felt so embarrassed. I felt scared for my mom a lot because I don't have a man in the house. So when I'm not there, it's just my mom. And I would fear that, that would be the time for him to do something. And obviously him being my boyfriend, like, he knew that. He knew that my mom, was alone when I wasn't there, because he knew my life. He was so close to it. And I really felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed that I had ever brought him around my mom. I felt really embarrassed and guilty that he had my mom's number. Um, I I felt like I should have done better in choosing my partner.
When did you get that first restraining order?
I got the first restraining order on October 28th. That was 1 month after we broke up. It was temporary from October 28th to November 28th, and from November 28th until the next year, it became permanent. The end of December, he started posting on social media that he was at my house, that he would be at my house, that he was watching me. He would say things like, "Oh, I noticed your mom parked on the street," when in fact she did. So, they were real, "Oh, you're not home," when in fact I was not home. My car was gone. January 13th rolls around, and I actually catch him outside leaving sticky notes and flowers um, at my door because I ran out at the right time, opened the door, and saw him, and I called the police immediately. And he only spent 2 days in jail and was released. And 2 weeks later, I get a book on my carport, and the book is about a murder. So middle of January, he's already been to jail. He's aware of this restraining order. It's been in place since November.
So, at what point did your mom get involved?
She got involved when he started leaving the sticky notes on our door. She was really scared, and she knew, and this was after we had gotten a restraining order. I mean, he had already been to court and had, acknowledged and accepted the restraining order, and then started leaving sticky notes a month later under full knowledge. And so that's what really upset my mom, was that he was willing to do this, perfectly, aware of the restraining order in place and that he shouldn't be doing this.
So I think we're going to turn over to Anne here for a few questions. Anne, when did you first hear about your daughter being stalked?
Well, I was pretty much always aware kind of what was happening with her stalker and the harassment. My daughter's an adult and she would have ideas of what to do to take care of herself, and I allowed that, but I was always kind of in the background watching what was going on. It was when she changed her phone number and he started coming onto our premises to leave like these flags on our front doors and on our carport, almost as if to say he's flagging it for someone else to come by and take care of it. This is where they live, kind of what I felt. It was scary.
What was your first reaction when all this, was going down?
I was frightened. I was frightened for my daughter, and I was frightened for myself, for animals, because I had seen texts where, horrible texts where he had threatened to hurt our animals and my daughter.
Had you ever gone through anything like this or known somebody who's had stalker in their life before?
Never. I've seen it on TV. I never thought that it would be something that we would look at it in our lives. So I did sort of feel a little bit of helplessness because this was going on every day, and we would try and think of ways that we could, what we should do, what process we should follow. And uh, there was a little bit of a feeling of hopelessness at points as well.
What did you think when Lauren came to you and told you that she had to get a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend?
I fully supported her. I felt that was the right thing for her to do, so that we would have. I encouraged her greatly, and kind of kept on her to make sure that she did go ahead and go through that process. And it's a lengthy process. There's a lot involved with that. But I was right behind her, saying, no, you can take care of it. Let's do it. Let's get it done. Whatever we have to do, let's do it.
What was that process like for you?
It was lengthy. There's a lot of paperwork to fill out, going down to the court, meeting with people, waiting in line, having to, just gather the information and make sure everything is in order. It was during those times of hopelessness that I mentioned earlier that I got on the computer one day and private investigator came to mind. And so I just started looking. I Googled it. I went into Yelp and I looked there. And that was where I thought I needed to go to because, I mean, the police could only do so much. Your friends, your family, they're there maybe to support you, but there's only so much they can do. And my thought of looking up for a private investigator, because as I said, it was one thing after another, and it's almost to the point where you go, okay, he left a sticky note on our door. Do I call the police for that? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but I wasn't sure of his mental state. Does that mean in a few hours he's going to do something else? I feel the police really actually did do a lot, helped us out quite a bit and did their part that they were able to.
What made you decide to choose Eric?
It was Yelp. And reading some of the reviews, he had great ratings. All the other reviews were outstanding for him. And I looked at some others as well, and there was something that drew me to Eric and Peterson Investigations. I felt really good about it, and I'm really glad I did because he was so responsive, and he just made me feel a little bit more at ease, and we had a good flowing conversation. I felt relaxed sharing my information with him. So
What was it like that first time when you went to meet him?
he actually came to me. We made an appointment within an hour after connecting the first time, and he came right over. It was like uh, someone that I knew coming into my home. He was great, very friendly and warm. Uh, Listened to my story.
Had you ever hired a private investigator before or had been down that process?
I had never experienced that before. I think I'm a fan of crime shows. So I think that's what triggered the idea in my head in the first time, in the first place. Um, I was pleasantly surprised by how easy it was to connect with Eric and how he was just willing to do whatever it took to get this guy. Um, that was very comforting, and I'll always remember that interaction.
Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Why did you decide to become a private investigator?
It was a natural transition for me from my career in law enforcement. I did it because I've spent the majority of my career in detectives and law enforcement, and so I could use my skills to help people on a wide variety of problems and just with a lot of issues and be that calming force for them. So it was just a natural transition. Well, when I sat down with Anne initially, she told me that this was the last resort and they were potentially going to move because of this guy's actions. And so I didn't want that to obviously happen. And so what I did was we sat down and we dissected the case. And I told him, nobody knows your case better than you. Nobody cares about your case better than you. So we created a Dropbox, and I told them to create a timeline and put everything in order with the evidence. And then I did a home assessment on their residence to just make sure that it was secure, make sure that we've got proper lighting, and I put up a hidden camera to catch some of these things that this guy was doing, and just tried to get them to feel a lot more safe than prior to meeting me. Just looked around their home and see what we can do to secure it. I had one of my camera guy contacts go out there, take a look at it. Obviously, we're dealing with the residents, and then they had a carport where the guy committed some vandalism. So we want to catch future crime so we can present that to the police and they can present it to the district attorney. So not only do we have the security of the house, but then we also have the evidence, and we want to collect as much evidence going further after they met me so we can, ensure that he gets charged with all of that as well.
What was your first reaction? Was this something you had ever, experienced before? Somebody of this type of behavior?
A lot of the crimes that I've handled, a lot of the stalking crimes revolve around entertainers, whether it's a musician or an actor or an actress. So you kind of understand why somebody maybe wants to attach themselves to a song or is infatuated with a show or the way somebody looks, if they're in the public eye. With this particular case, I looked at the communication and his intent. And like Lauren said, he initiated this the next day. So then you look at some of the actions. You look at the flowers that were left. There was also a book left. He also stole a Ring camera. So you kind of look at what is his intent to all of this. He doesn't want to, be captured on the Ring camera, and he also wants to commit vandalism. And then you look at the intent of what he's saying and texting and trying to include her friends and her mom and things like that. So I always go extreme and think that he's going to cause harm to her mom, her dog. So I'm always preparing for the worst for them, and hopefully I could be that barrier for them. But we just adjust as it goes. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they're safe, and then we got to make sure that this case is solid. I also monitored him. I knew where he was working, so we monitored him there. Made sure that we and actually he got a job near where Lauren is living, and so he could essentially walk to her house after work. So monitored him, periodically there, and just kept tabs on everything and kept in constant communication with Lauren and Ann so we could combat this.
How do the laws in California protect someone who's being stalked?
So I think that this is a perfect case to talk about the laws in California and the use of the restraining order and the temporary restraining order. If you look at the law, it also talks about family, and he actually directed both of his aggression towards her and her mom. So the laws are pretty straightforward, and he actually was arrested and got multiple counts, and then he got multiple counts of the violation of the restraining order. So this is a perfect example, in my opinion, of what they did right. They paid attention to the case. They called the police. The police responded. They did a fantastic job. They arrested him twice on two separate occasions. One for a violation of restraining order, one for the disobeying and the stalking. And so, and Lauren didn't have to go to court. He actually pled guilty. And so I think the system was great in this sense, and they did a great job. When you call police departments, when you call law enforcement, the officers that are responding, especially if it's in a big city or a busy city, they're only going off of the facts that you give them. And obviously it's an emotional time for the victims and the family. So you really got to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just say, this is what happened, this is how it happened, and this is and can you help me? And in this particular case, they did an amazing job. This police department, they had her talk to him while he was at a park. They ended up contacting him. So it worked out well, and it's continuing to work out well. And I'm only having to interject as needed. So you just got to pay attention to what you're experiencing and collect as much data as possible and present that to the police in a clear, concise manner, and it'll work.
What can someone generally expect to spend when they're taking a stalker to court?
You can research the different laws. You could look into, hey, does this fit the criteria? Obviously, you're not paying for the police to come out there. So if it fits the criteria, you talk to the police department. Potentially, you could possibly have a conversation with a detective from that police department if you go to their front desk. If they deem that this is a crime or it's right there. The client or the victim needs to take an active approach. I certainly don't charge to talk to people about their case, just to give them free advice. So you could just take a proactive approach. And I was responding to what Ann and Lauren were experiencing. So when they had something, then they would call me, or I would check in with them periodically. So just being involved. And I know it's probably easy for a victim to just withdraw and no, it's not happening to me, or not report it, or this thing like that. You have to be involved with any case that I have with clients. You have to jump on it as soon as you can and get involved and start researching. And that's what Anne started doing. And Lauren was extremely active, and we have everything in one place in terms of the evidence. And it worked out perfectly. I thought this was a great example of people getting involved and not spending a whole lot of money. But if you're looking at maybe an actor who has a house broken into from a stalker, well, that person potentially should have a better security system than us, or maybe 24/7 security. But it really just depends. I think maybe less than $1,000 for everything to secure your home, keep tabs on him, and but obviously that stalker and that suspect's going to determine the response and what happens. And if you have a good detective that you're working with, and you get law enforcement involved, and they maybe can do periodic checks by your house, or there's different kind of tiers that you can have to combat things. And if you live in a condo complex and they have security, then you alert your complex, the manager, and things like that. So you got to get everybody involved. And with respect to Lauren's case, her friends were involved. Obviously, her mother's involved, and you've got people that are around you that are kind of a task force to help you in this entire thing. So it really, I try to be as efficient as I can with my cases, and just let the client know what they specifically need, when and where. And because if it is going to be a long, drawn out case, we want to have a budget for it.
When he was finally caught, what was that like?
Eventually, he admitted to everything that Lauren talked about, that he did. And so he admitted to it, and they got that. And then he was arrested at his place of work. And so, and then the police department detective and the DA investigator kept in communication with Lauren and gave her progress of the case. And Lauren didn't have to go to court, which is how it should be. She didn't have to go to court and didn't have to do anything, and he pled guilty. I mean, the deck was stacked against him. He admitted to everything, including the vandalism, everything. So it worked out well, and that's how it should work out, where you get that limited interaction between the victim and the suspect at court. Because then that's another aspect of what we do. You don't want any interaction there. So they, as soon as they got that admission, shortly thereafter, he was arrested.
Is there a certification that a private investigator needs? How do you make sure that you've hired a good one?
Anne did her homework, and she checked the internet and checked what other clients have said. There is a certification. Every state has private investigator license certifications. So you could verify that. And then I think the best thing, though, Anne and I spoke on the phone, and she got to know me, and then we sat and talked, and she got to know me. I think, at the end of the day, each private investigator maybe has their specialty, like a doctor or attorney or something like that, and you got to look at what they have done in the past, and maybe go through that interview process. Oftentimes, I get called, and the client has said that they've talked to other private investigators, and some of the advice that those men or women have given them weren't maybe the best advice, and that's why they chose me. So I think it really just depends. You have all these resources at your fingertips, and you just call and talk to them, and if that person's right for your case. Fortunately, in this case too, I was very close to their house. I'm not that far from where they live, so if they saw him outside the house, I could respond while I'm responding, call the police, and go from there. So location obviously helps.
Eric, thank you tremendously. I mean, all these are amazing tips, and I think it's really going to help, people. They know, where they can turn if they're ever dealing with this situation. Lauren, I think we're going to pivot back to you, because I'd love to discuss the timeline when you put that together for Eric, basically. Were you keeping details of all the incidents that you had with your stalker throughout when he was doing them?
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not keep as many details and as many notes as I should have. I mean, the fact that this happened every day, I'm sure there are still things that the police and that even Eric doesn't have because I was not actively every single time. So my advice is every single thing, write it down. Be as detailed as possible. Even if it's an Instagram that doesn't have his name, or it doesn't have, anything that could look like it belongs to him, write it down anyway. If as long as you write it down and you keep the date and time of things, it is so much easier for everybody. Because I was able to screenshot, thankfully, a lot of this was on social media, text messages, things like that. So I was able to screenshot and go back in and look at the dates and times of everything. But it would have been so much easier to have started that when this had started happening, and then every time something had happened to just add on to it. I mean, everything should be recorded. Every little thing that, happened. Everything. I think I would receive close to 200 phone calls in a month. Then at the end of October, he started posting on social media that he would make and follow me on. So it's not like I was actively looking at his social media. These were accounts that he would make specifically so that I would see what his posts were. And at the end of October, he started threatening me, telling me that, he's going to let my dogs out, or my dog and my cat out. He's going to be waiting for me on Halloween. He posted on social media that I'm going to be his Laurie Strode tonight, and he's going to drag me to the grocery store next to my house, and that he couldn't wait to kill me.
What do you want to happen to your stalker?
We are still on guard. I mean, even though this happened and he's confessed, I don't feel at peace. I don't feel as, still safe and comfortable, because only time is going to tell that. Honestly, as a victim, it is so hard to take action against someone that I used to love. And honestly, I think Eric is completely right that the victim needs to have an active role and be active. But if it was not for my mom and my friends wanting to get involved themselves because of the harassment and wanting, to protect me, it would not be at this point, I think, because in the beginning, I did everything that I could to not get him in trouble. I mean, I filed for a temporary restraining order instead of a permanent one, because that doesn't go on his permanent record, and I wanted him to start over and heal from this, and that ended up being what backfired in my face. It really did. And I am so thankful that I had that, but it was a new experience as a victim to know that there was parts of me that felt guilty and felt like I had made him this, and that I didn't want to see anything bad happen to him. And even now, it doesn't sit right with me knowing that someone just sits in jail and just, just sits there and gets released a couple months later. I think that when someone is dealing with whatever mental issues they have, they need the right support and resources to heal from that. And so ultimately, I want him to get help and, get counseling for the things that he experienced in life that made him want to do this in the first place.
What's next for you?
What's next for me is hopefully being at peace. Part of my role in giving him a plea deal was me, I was able to give him mandatory counseling for 3 years. So he will be going to therapy for some of the things he's dealt with. And I was able to tell the DA investigator personally some of the things he dealt with in life. So hopefully, knowing that, he will be going to that. And if nothing else happens, what's next for me is just continuing my life, finishing school, continuing my career. And I'm going to be more cautious of who I meet in the future. This situation has definitely made me less trusting and kind of less social to people, but more aware than anything. I don't think I could ever stop being an outgoing person and a friendly person if I wanted to, but definitely more aware of who I meet. The number one piece of advice I could give is that it's not your fault. I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of blame because this was an isolated incident. He had never done this before, had been charged for something like this. And like I said, in the relationship, even though there was some emotional immaturity, I didn't see this kind of behavior. And for that reason, there was a lot of guilt and blame that I felt. Maybe if I had done the things that he blamed me for, he wouldn't be like this. And, it took me a really long time to realize that, like, it's not my fault at all. There was nothing I could have done to prevent this kind of situation from happening. And so my biggest piece of advice to someone in my position is that it is not your fault. It is not your fault that this happened. It is not your fault. You could not have done anything different. And my other piece of advice is to be active. It got as bad as it did because of my lack of involvement in the very beginning. And I think that a lot of things could have been prevented had I had been more involved in the beginning. Also, make sure that you have a good support system, people that love you and, want the best for you and stuff, because it's a really isolating event. It can be really isolating, especially if you have to change a lot of your information. So having people that are going to stick by your side and listen. The fact that I'm able to share this and talk about this and talk to other people about it has helped me heal too, So if you have people that you can talk to about it, please do.
So, Anne, what do you want for your daughter?
I just want her to have a happy, healthy, spiritual life and, do the things that she has set her goals for, like any mom that wants for their kids. It's because of my faith that I know that we are where we're at today. There's so many things that could have gone wrong, but with the help of Eric and the police and the support of my family and friends, I just, in God, I think that will be okay.
What do you want to happen to Lauren Stalker?
Like Lauren, I would like to see him get the mental help that he needs. Uh, and I'm sure it was years in the making to bring this man to where he did what he did.
What advice would you give to another parent whose child is being stalked?
Get involved. Don't let it just rest. Don't think that it's just going to go away. Look for your resources, everyone, anything, anywhere that you can find, and you want to make sure that everything is documented. So you have that for your backup. I would say, for me, in my opinion, prayer. Be active in your children's life. Encourage them to tell you what's going on in their lives.
So, Eric, how can we find out more about your services and the steps that someone should take if they're being stalked?
So you could find me at petersoninvestigations.com. And from there, I'll put some tips on how to react to stalking and how to help yourself in those situations. The number one piece of advice I believe that you should do if you're a victim of stalking is to be active in your case and try to keep you and your family safe and be very aware of what's going on.
Lauren, Ann, and Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of
Welcome.
course. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
If anyone out there is in need of help or is a victim of stalking, please reach out. You can find a list of resources on our Instagram at Strictly Stalking Pod, including a link for Eric's firm, Peterson Investigations.
You can watch all of our new episodes on YouTube at www.youtube.com/strictlystalkingpod. I'm Jake Deptula.
And I'm Jamie Beebe. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Strictly Stalking.